Now I will demonstrate how to create a stackable surgical guide in coDiagnostiX, using this case as an example. We will use a bone reduction guide and a positioner guide. The positioner guide is connected with the bone reduction guide and fixed on the teeth. Then the reduction guide is fixed with pins, and the positioner guide is removed. Then the teeth are extracted, and if necessary, we do bone reduction. The implant guide is then taken and fixed to the bone reduction guide. The implants are placed, and the guide is removed. SRA abutments or multi-units are placed. Then a printed prosthetic design is taken and also fixed to the reduction guide. The abutments are fixed to the construct. Then they are unscrewed. The construct is removed and finalized in the lab. After that we can remove the bone reduction guide, suture the wound, and fix our temporary prosthetic structure in the mouth. Let's break down how to make such a case. I have already uploaded the CBCT scan and now I need to send this data to the artificial intelligence. For this I click on this icon. Click on Provide Data. After the processing has started, I proceed to the fourth step, uploading the STL file. I select the mandible file, click Open and also transfer the data to the artificial intelligence. Select mandible. Click Provide Data. While the program is processing the data, I go and make a cup of espresso. The coffee is ready, and the artificial intelligence has also processed our data. We see a green check mark here. We'll open it to full screen. We check the numbering of the teeth. If the program is wrong with the numbering of the teeth, we can change it. In this case, we are not interested in the upper jaw. That's right. I'm going to take the upper jaw out of the plan so it doesn't bother me. Let's take a look at the patient's coordinate system. Make some adjustments to the panoramic curve. Nerve canals. And the alignment of the scans. I like it all. Import the reviewed data. Disable default segmentation. And now our project is ready for implant placement. A wax modeling of the teeth has already been made for this project. Let's import it. Go to Step 4. Load Scan. And select our Wax Up scan. This scan has been saved in the same coordinate system relative to the jaw. And so we'll click Copy Coordinate. And click Finish. Now we are ready to place the implants. I will skip this step as it is a basic one. If you do not know how to place implants and how to select abutments, please follow the basic lesson in coDiagnostiX. Here the implants have already been positioned and the pins have also been positioned. We can turn off AI models, turn off our model scans and see the placement of the implants. Creating the stackable guide starts with the bone reduction line and the bone reduction guide. Since it is the base and primary guide, and all the next guides will be placed on them. The bone reduction line will follow the upper boundary of the bone reduction guide. The quickest way to do this is to snap the plane to the implant surface. We go to the plus menu and select the bone reduction tool. The program has added this tool. We open the panoramic view, and then select Add Implants Base Points. I use the Shift key and the mouse wheel to zoom in a little bit. And you can see that the bone reduction line ends at the distal implants. I need to extend it to create this pattern. As you can see, it goes up above the jaw line. And here in the picture it ends at the distal implants. I extend it so that it doesn't cross the path of the sleeves when the implants are angled. I take the edges of the reduction plane well beyond the bone border. I make this transition smooth. In this case, pay attention to the 37th tooth. The reduction plane intersects the 37th tooth. It will still be removed and I need to remove it virtually on the scans. To remove the 37 tooth, I right-click on the STL model in the list on the left and select Tooth Extraction. Select 37 tooth. I can simply extract this tooth from the scan. I can extract this tooth and cover it with a virtual flap, or I can extract it and model a virtual alveoles. In this case, I don't need the alveoles option, because this option is good for immediate implant placement, but I just need to close this surface with a virtual flap so that the bone reduction guide will lie on top of this flap. So I will select Cut and Close, and click on the next button. As you can see, coDiagnostiX just cut this tooth for me, closed it with a small virtual flap. Click Apply, and we can see this model. Now let's start creating a guide for bone reduction. This guide will be supported on the bone. The flap will be opened. Then the positioner guide and the bone reduction guide will be positioned. The pins will be inserted. The guide will be removed. The teeth will be extracted. And the reduction will be made. The support, as you can see, will be exactly on the bone. Meaning that the flap must already be folded back before this guide is placed, when the teeth have not yet been extracted. So I will have to use the lower jaw, which has been segmented by artificial intelligence, for the bone support. With the right mouse button, I click on Edit Mesh. In the Mesh Editor I go to the Bone Reduction Simulation tool, select the bone reduction profile and click on Run Simulation. The coDiagnostiX has made a bone reduction simulation. I save this jaw as a copy. Now in the list of model scans I see a copy of the reduced jaw. So I have the original with the teeth. Each tooth separately. And the reduced bone. I also have the original model. A separate extracted tooth. And a model without the tooth. We go into Module 7 of the guide design. Select the base model mandible copy. And select checkmark with cut profile. Adjust the insertion direction. Click on Next. Click on Next. Click on Use Large Connectors and set the offset to 0.1. In these parameters we can also adjust the offsets and the width of our guide. We can see the finished surgical guide. Click Next. And finally, we see the ready designed surgical guide for bone reduction. Click Apply. The guide is ready. Now let's start creating the guide for the positioner on the teeth. For this we need to create an STL model of the bone with teeth with the bone reduction guide fixed on it. To create the next guide, I need to create a support on the bone reduction guide and on the teeth. This means that I need to combine the teeth that the patient has in this bone reduction guide. I start by converting the guide into a 3D model. Now I have it in the 3D model scans. Then I find the STL model, the one where I cut out the tooth that's in my way. You see, the boundary of this guide will cross the boundary of this tooth, that's why I removed it. So what I need is this border. I open this model in the mesh editor. In the combine I select the object surgical guide. And you see what's in the way? We're on a soft tissue pathway that will be separated. I need to remove these soft tissues in the file. For this I take the cutting tool eraser. You can take the eraser that cuts from the top, or you can take the deep eraser. And I carefully trim the file. Now in the combine tool, I merge the mesh, merge these two objects A plus B, and click Apply Operation. We see the finished STL file of the merged teeth and merged base guide. Save it as a copy. Rename it to avoid confusion. And create the next guide. Guide design. Now as a base model, we select the guide created by us. Click on the next guide and select the insertion direction. We disable the position of the implants, but leave the pin sleeves. We're going to select a few areas of support. In the area of the sleeves, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. We'll put large connectors. We'll put an offset of 0.15. You can see our finished guide. We add inspection windows and try to open the seats with them for the guide. Our second guide is ready. We can change the color for it. And now, as you can see, we have assembled the first two guides. Now we need to create a third guide. We've already extracted the teeth. And we need to create a guide for the implants. So, we go into the guide design, and select our surgical guide 1, as the base. This is the very first base guide frame. Click Next. Zoom in on the support, and add support elements. You can see the finished guide. We also adjusted a little with the inspection windows. Add engraving of the rotation markers. In the presets we had a protocol for each of the implants. Now we see our third guide, which will also be fixed on the frame. Now we need to add the prosthetic here. If the data needs to be corrected, you can do it in any CAD software, or directly in coDiagnostiX. Open the mesh editor. I'm going to turn on the surgical guide for easier visualization. So, I can see which parts I need to trim. Close the holes. Now, how do I apply this to this guide? If I don't add the surface, the gingiva, the program won't know where to attach these holders. So, I need to create the shape of my reduction guide, aligned with the virtual bottom edge of this wax-up. I'll also go into the mesh editor, and correct it a little bit. I go to cutting, and use eraser tool. I need to delete whole top area of this object. I need to keep only small bottom part. To remove the rest of the artifacts, you can click on Repair Mesh, and coDiagnostiX will remove all the unnecessary artifacts. Now I need to invert this surface. And add a guide to this surface. Merge it. And save it as a copy. I'm going to rename it. Now we just need to create our prosthetic. To make it fit, with the bone reduction guide. That is prosthetic, without holes and without holders. We need to attach the holders, and make holes. Go to step 7. Select our bone reduction guide, and our virtual gingiva, as the base model. Disable the implant sleeves, but leave the pin sleeves. If I only leave the pin sleeves, I don't get these little holders. That's why I created the virtual gingiva. Now I'm going to take and make a little support here. Here. And here. And I also want to make a little distal support. Let's press the large connectors. Put the same offsets. And now, we've got a surgical guide. That looks kind of weird. Add an inspection window, to reveal the sleeve seat. And now in the Add Object option, I select the file that I edited. Done. It remains for this file to make holes, for the prosthetic relining. And this is already quite a simple step, as well as all the others. Convert it into a 3D object. Now we go to Export. STL file. Insert implant analogs. Next. Select our object. This is Surgical Guide 4. Select the analog and increase its height. We need to create these cylinders from abutment level. The high of the cylinders should be bigger than our prosthetics. We should have the option to subtract the analog from the model. Click Next. And we see our finished model, with the holes cut out for the orthotics. Now we can export it. Export it relative to the wax-up coordinates. If I need to load it back into the project, I select this design. I click Copy Coordinates to wax up. And we see all of our designs. The most attentive may have noticed that there are no artifacts in my surgical guide. And here, on the screen, there are. It's a lot of different elements not attached to the guide that I need to remove. And if I unload this particular guide and click export, it will unload with these artifacts. And then I will have to remove these artifacts in the 3D printer program. But not all programs have this function. And we can do it in another way. You can remove these artifacts directly in coDiagnostiX. It's a simple thing to do. Just select our original guide, but not the one in the surgical guides section, but the one on which we made the supports and which we have already converted into a 3D model. Select it. Click Edit Mesh. Click the Repair Mesh button. And the Apply button. Now, when unloading, it is important that to make these guides, we will need to unload not this guide, but the one that we have just corrected. Now you know how to design stackable surgical guides.